Rachel was walking through the park, admiring the blooming trees and inhaling the fragrant smell of the flowers. She sat down on a bench and noticed a young woman sitting across the alley. She looked no more than 19 years old. She was pregnant, and judging by her huge belly, she was going to give birth soon. Rachel looked at her face and was surprised. The stranger was silently wiping away her tears with her handkerchief, which flowed treacherously over and over again. It was obvious that the young woman was on the verge of hysteria. Rachel walked over to the bench where the pregnant woman was sitting and asked if she was all right. This innocent question made the young woman cry even harder. Rachel couldn't help it and began to calm her, asking her to tell her what was wrong, hoping there was something she could do to help her. The stranger calmed down a little and told her story. Her name was Molly, and she had come to the city to study. There she met a man. He told her he was in love with her, promised that he would marry her, and Molly listened and believed it all unconditionally. When she got pregnant, her boyfriend changed. He became angry with her, constantly making scandals as if she was the only one to be responsible for everything. Eventually, he kicked her out of his apartment, saying he was sure the baby wasn't his. Molly's parents were in another town, and they didn't know she was pregnant because she hadn't told them yet. That's how Molly ended up in the park, without money, pregnant, and with the prospect of sleeping out under the stars. Rachel realized that it wasn't an easy situation, but she couldn't go quietly past another person's misfortune. She got up and told Molly to follow her. The girl looked at her with eyes full of wonder. Rachel explained that she lived with her daughter, and Molly could stay with them tonight, and then they would figure something out. Molly had little choice. It was evening, and she had nowhere else to go, so she accepted the generous offer of a strange woman. At home, Rachel fed her guest and then gave her tea and honey. She tried to get Molly to call her parents, but she flatly refused because she was afraid of her strict father. Rachel sighed and decided not to insist. She settled Molly down in her daughter's room, and after wishing her good night, she was about to leave when Molly suddenly asked where her daughter was. Rachel slowly turned and pointed to a picture hanging on the wall. There was a portrait of a girl about 16 years old, and she explained that she still couldn't get over the loss of her dearest person. So she was telling everyone that she was living with her daughter. Rachel took another look at the portrait of her daughter and went to her bedroom. Molly didn't understand how the portrait could be considered a person, but Rachel was kind to her and didn't seem mad, so it didn't bother her. Everyone lives as he or she thinks is right. The next day, Rachel and Molly went to Molly's boyfriend's home. "I already have another girlfriend, and you, Molly, have nothing to do here anymore. I don't know who is the father of your child, but it's definitely not me," the man said, smiling defiantly. Rachel was shocked by this greeting, but determinedly went into the apartment to get Molly's things. Already at home, she suggested that Molly stay with her until she gave birth and then return home to her parents. Molly felt the weights of her worries gone away and burst into tears of gratitude. 3 weeks passed. During this time, Rachel had grown very attached to Molly, for she had replaced her daughter, even if only for a short time. One night, Molly woke up to her water breaking. Rachel took her to the hospital, and when a healthy baby boy was born a few hours later, she was over the moon. Rachel decided not to bother Molly tonight and to visit the young mother tomorrow morning. But in the evening, she received a call from the maternity hospital telling her that Molly was going to give up the baby. Everyone thought Rachel was Molly's mother and hoped that she would talk some sense into her daughter. An hour later, a dazed Rachel was already in the doctor's office. Together they tried to persuade the young woman not to make rash steps, because it was important for the baby to be with its mother, and even animals didn't leave their cubs. But Molly raised her weeping eyes at them and said that animals had their own dens or lairs, but she had no place to go. I can't go back to my parents because they drink a lot, and they don't need me and my baby. I came to the city with the money my grandmother was able to hide from them. Before I left, my grandmother told me to get an education, find a fiancé in the city, and never come back to my hometown. And now nobody wants me, and I can't give my son anything, not even a roof over his head. At this point, Rachel hugged Molly and told her that she needed her, and that it had been a mistake not to tell her the whole truth about her parents. Then she wouldn't have insisted on coming home. Rachel confessed to Molly that she had become attached to her as her own daughter, and that there was no way that she could lose another daughter and grandchild, so she would wait for Molly and her son at her home. At this point, everyone in the office was crying, even the doctor. A few hours later, Molly and the baby were discharged from the hospital, and Rachel drove them to her home. She always knew she wasn't destined to shop in the baby department anymore, but life had given her a second chance. She brought clothes for the newborn, diapers, and all the necessary care items. Now Molly had a real home and a real mother, and she returned to education. And Rachel had a daughter again. Everything worked out very well.